Hello, my dear students. Today, I want to share a very personal story with you. It's about my struggle to learn English. I hope my story inspires you and shows you that learning a new language is possible, no matter how hard it may seem in the beginning. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Joseph, and I come from a small town where English was not a common language. When I was growing up, English was like a mystery to me. I would hear people speaking it in movies or on TV, and I thought, wow, it sounds so cool, but I will never be able to speak it. The motivation to learn English came from a dream. I always wanted to travel to other countries, meet new people, and maybe even work in a place where English was necessary. But there was a problem. I didn't know even the basics. I couldn't introduce myself, and I didn't understand most of the words. At the beginning, everything about English felt so confusing. The words sounded so different from my native language. For example, when I heard words like through or enough, I had no idea how to pronounce them. And let's not even talk about grammar. Words like past perfect or present continuous made my head spin. One of my biggest challenges was speaking. I was afraid to speak in front of others because I thought I would make mistakes and people would laugh at me. I remember one time in school when my teacher asked me to read a sentence in English. I froze. My hands were shaking and my face turned red. After that, I avoided speaking English as much as I could. But deep inside, I knew that learning English was important for my future. It wasn't just about traveling or working abroad. I wanted to connect with the world. English is a global language, and I realized that knowing it would open so many doors for me. I wanted to be able to watch movies without subtitles, talk to people from different countries, and most importantly, feel confident in myself. This is how my journey began. It was a slow and sometimes painful process, but it taught me so much about patience and determination. And now, here I am, sharing my story with all of you. I hope you can learn something from my experience and know that it's okay to struggle at first. Everyone starts somewhere, and that's perfectly fine. So, let's keep going, step by step, and I'll tell you how I overcame my challenges and finally learned English. The beginning of the journey. Now, let me take you back to the very beginning of my journey to learn English. After I decided that I wanted to learn this language, I had no idea where to start. It felt like standing at the bottom of a very tall mountain, looking up and wondering how I would ever reach the top. But I knew I had to take the first step. At first, I started with the most basic things. I bought an old English grammar book from a local bookstore. It had lists of words, small sentences, and grammar exercises. I remember flipping through the pages, trying to understand the rules. It was hard because everything felt so new. Words like am, is, and are seemed so small, yet their usage confused me a lot. I also tried watching English TV shows and movies. This was supposed to be fun, but in the beginning, it was frustrating. The actors spoke so fast that I couldn't catch a single word. I had to pause every 5 seconds to check the subtitles, and even then, I didn't understand half of what was going on. I started with cartoons because they were easier to follow. Shows like Tom and Jerry had fewer words and I could guess the meaning through the actions. Another method I tried was listening to English songs. I thought it would help me learn pronunciation. I wrote down the lyrics and tried to sing along, but my pronunciation was terrible. I remember singing a famous song, and someone laughed because I pronounced most of the words wrong. It was embarrassing, but it also made me want to improve. I attended some basic English classes in my town. There, I met other people who were also learning English. This gave me some comfort because I realized I wasn't alone in my struggle. However, the classes were not easy for me. The teacher would ask us to form sentences, but I couldn't even remember the correct words to use. Sometimes, I just sat quietly, hoping the teacher wouldn't ask me a question. One of my biggest struggles was vocabulary. I realized that even if I knew the grammar rules, I couldn't speak or write without knowing the words. To fix this, I started carrying a small notebook with me. Every time I came across a new word, I wrote it down and tried to use it in a sentence. For example, one day I learned the word beautiful. I started using it everywhere. The weather is beautiful. This dress is beautiful. You have a beautiful smile. I wanted to make sure I never forgot it. Pronunciation was another big challenge for me. Some sounds in English didn't exist in my native language, so I struggled to say words like think and this. I remember standing in front of the mirror, practicing these words over and over again. It felt silly, but it helped me build confidence. Grammar, though, was my greatest enemy. The rules were confusing, and I often mixed them up. For instance, I would say, he go to school, instead of he goes to school. I kept making mistakes, and it felt like I would never get it right. But I reminded myself that mistakes are part of learning. Despite all these struggles, I kept going. I told myself that every small step would bring me closer to my goal. Sometimes I felt discouraged. Sometimes I thought about giving up. But then I remembered my dream, to speak English fluently, to travel the world, and to connect with people. This dream kept me moving forward, even when the journey was tough. Looking back, I realized that those early days were the hardest, but also the most important. They taught me the value of persistence and the importance of celebrating small victories. Whether it was learning a new word, understanding a sentence, or finally pronouncing something correctly, each little success motivated me to keep going. So, my dear students, remember this. The beginning is always the hardest part. But once you start, you will see progress, no matter how small. Keep learning, keep practicing, and never give up. The journey may be long, but it is worth every step. Facing challenges. Let me tell you about one of the most challenging moments in my journey to learn English. It was a moment that made me feel small and defeated, but it also taught me an important lesson about perseverance. This incident happened when I was invited to a family gathering. One of my cousins had returned from studying abroad, and he brought along a few of his friends who didn't speak our native language. They only spoke English. Everyone at the gathering was excited, chatting and laughing, but I was sitting in the corner, feeling completely out of place. At one point, one of my cousin's friends turned to me and said something in English. I froze. My mind went blank. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my response. The problem was, I didn't understand what he said. The words felt like a blur, and I couldn't even guess the meaning. I panicked and mumbled, "Sorry, I don't understand." He smiled politely and tried again, but I still couldn't respond. I felt so embarrassed. I could hear people whispering, and I thought they were laughing at me. My cheeks turned red, and I wished I could disappear. After that, I avoided the group entirely. I spent the rest of the evening sitting quietly, pretending to be busy on my phone. Inside, I felt so ashamed. I kept thinking, why didn't I work harder? Why can't I even have a simple conversation in English? That night, when I got home, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head. I felt frustrated, angry, and sad all at the same time. I started doubting myself. Maybe I wasn't smart enough to learn English. Maybe I would never be able to speak it. The thought of giving up crossed my mind. I thought about stopping my lessons and accepting that English wasn't for me. But then something happened. I remembered why I started this journey in the first place. I thought about my dream to travel the world, to meet new people, and to feel confident in any situation. I reminded myself that everyone faces challenges when they're learning something new. Mistakes and failures are part of the process. I also thought about a quote I had once read: "The expert in anything was once a beginner." Those words stayed with me that night. They reminded me that every expert, every fluent English speaker, had to start somewhere. They too must have faced challenges and embarrassing moments. I decided to turn my embarrassment into motivation. Instead of giving up, I asked myself, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? I made a plan to improve my listening and speaking skills. I started watching English videos with subtitles, listening to podcasts, and practicing speaking out loud, even if I was alone. One of the biggest sources of inspiration came from a friend I met in my English class. His name was David, and he was also learning English. He shared his own struggles with me, and we decided to practice together. We would meet after class and have small conversations in English, no matter how many mistakes we made. David always encouraged me, saying, "It's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn." Another thing that kept me going was my goal. I imagined myself in the future, speaking English confidently, traveling to new places, and connecting with people from different cultures. That vision gave me the strength to keep pushing forward, even on the hardest days. Of course, the journey didn't become easy overnight. There were still times when I felt frustrated and tired. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered that embarrassing evening and told myself, I never want to feel that way again. That memory became my motivation to work harder and keep improving. So, my dear students, if you ever feel like giving up, remember this: challenges are not the end of the road. They are stepping stones that lead to success. Use your struggles as fuel to keep going. Believe in yourself. Stay focused on your goal and never stop learning. Trust me, the effort you put in today will bring you closer to your dreams tomorrow. Finding effective strategies. As I continued my journey of learning English, I realized that my old methods weren't enough to help me progress quickly. Reading grammar books and writing down vocabulary lists had given me a foundation, but I still struggled with real-life conversations and understanding spoken English. It was clear that I needed new strategies, ways to make learning more practical, engaging, and effective. One of the first things I did was to change how I approached English. Instead of treating it as a subject to study, I started treating it as a skill to practice. This mindset shift was crucial. I realized that if I wanted to improve, I needed to immerse myself in the language as much as possible. Speaking with friends. One of the most effective strategies I found was practicing English with friends. Remember my friend David from my English class? We decided to take our practice sessions more seriously. Instead of only speaking English in class, we made a pact to use English whenever we talked to each other. At first, it was awkward and slow. We would pause often, searching for the right words, and sometimes we resorted to gestures or even our native language when we got stuck. But over time, these conversations became smoother. David and I even started role-playing different scenarios. For example, we would pretend to order food in a restaurant or introduce ourselves at a party. These activities were not only fun, but also incredibly helpful. They allowed us to practice practical English that we could use in real-life situations. I also joined an online English speaking group. This group connected learners from around the world. We would meet on video calls and discuss simple topics like hobbies, favorite movies, or weekend plans. Listening to people from different countries helped me get used to different accents, and speaking with them boosted my confidence. Listening to podcasts. Listening to podcasts was another game changer for me. At first, I thought podcasts would be too difficult because the speakers often talk fast. But then I discovered podcasts specifically designed for English learners. These podcasts used simple language, clear pronunciation, and sometimes even explained difficult words. I started listening to podcasts every day, even during small breaks. For example, I would play a podcast while commuting, doing chores, or relaxing in the evening. At first, I understood only about 30% of what was being said, but I didn't let that discourage me. I focused on catching the main ideas and gradually picked up more details as my listening skills improved. One day, I realized I had understood an entire podcast episode without pausing or checking a dictionary. That moment felt like a huge victory. It showed me that my hard work was paying off, and it motivated me to keep going. Using apps and technology. As technology advanced, I discovered language learning apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and HelloTalk. These apps became my daily companions. They turned learning English into a game with levels to complete and rewards to earn. Duolingo, for example, helped me practice vocabulary and grammar in a fun way. It would give me short sentences to translate or match words with pictures. I made it a habit to spend 15 minutes on the app every morning. This consistency helped me build a strong vocabulary base. HelloTalk was another amazing tool. It allowed me to connect with native English speakers who wanted to learn my language. We would exchange messages, correcting each other's mistakes. Through this app, I not only improved my English, but also made friends from different parts of the world, watching movies and TV shows. Another strategy that worked wonders for me was watching movies and TV shows in English. At first, I chose movies with subtitles in my native language. This helped me understand the story while getting used to the sound of English. After a few months, I switched to English subtitles. This forced me to focus more on the spoken language. I started with simple and familiar movies, like animated films and comedies. Gradually, I moved on to more challenging genres. One day, I watched an entire movie without subtitles and understood most of it. I remember feeling so proud of myself. It felt like I had unlocked a new level in my English learning journey. Reading and writing. To improve my reading and writing skills, I started reading children's books in English. These books used simple language and were easy to follow. I also read short articles online about topics that interested me, such as travel, technology, and culture. Writing was initially a big challenge for me. I made a lot of mistakes, especially with grammar and sentence structure. But I didn't let that stop me. I started keeping a journal where I wrote a few sentences in English every day. I wrote about my daily activities, my thoughts, and even my frustrations with learning English. Over time, my writing became clearer and more accurate. Small victories. Throughout this journey, I celebrated every small victory. These victories may have seemed minor to others, but to me, they were proof that I was improving. One of my first victories was understanding a simple conversation between two native speakers. I was watching a video, and for the first time, I didn't need to pause or rewind. Another victory was writing my first correct sentence without looking up any words or grammar rules. I remember the first time I ordered food in English at a cafe. I was so nervous, but I managed to say, "I'd like a coffee, please." The barista smiled and gave me my coffee without any confusion. That small success gave me the confidence to try speaking English in other real-life situations. Another proud moment was when I helped a tourist who was lost. He asked me for directions in English, and I was able to guide him to the right place. After he thanked me, I felt a sense of accomplishment that words cannot describe. Building confidence. Each small victory helped build my confidence. I realized that mistakes were not something to fear. They were opportunities to learn. Whenever I made a mistake, I reminded myself that it was part of the process. Over time, English started to feel less like a foreign language and more like a familiar friend. I still had a lot to learn, but I no longer felt intimidated by the challenges. Instead, I felt excited to see how much further I could go. So, my dear students, this part of my story teaches an important lesson. Finding effective strategies and celebrating small victories are key to learning any language. Everyone's journey is different, and you need to find what works best for you. Whether it's speaking with friends, listening to podcasts, or using apps, remember that every step forward is progress. Take it one day at a time, and don't forget to celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they may seem. Each small step brings you closer to your goal. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Let me take you to the moment when everything changed for me. This was the turning point in my journey, the moment I truly realized that my hard work was paying off and that my English had significantly improved. It happened during a trip I had been dreaming of for years. I had always wanted to visit a different country, explore new cultures, and interact with people from all over the world. Finally, I got the chance to travel to London. But to be honest, I was nervous. This was going to be the ultimate test of my English skills. When I arrived at the airport, I was surrounded by English everywhere, announcements, signs, and conversations. At first, I felt overwhelmed, but I reminded myself of how far I had come. The first big challenge came at the immigration desk. The officer asked me questions about my visit, such as, "What's the purpose of your trip?" and "How long are you staying?" For the first time in my life, I answered without hesitation. I said, "I'm here for a vacation, and I'll be staying for 1 week." The officer smiled, stamped my passport, and said, "Enjoy your stay." That moment felt like a small victory, but it meant everything to me. I realized that I had not only understood the questions, but had also responded confidently. One of the most memorable experiences happened a few days later. I was exploring the streets of London when I decided to stop at a small cafe. As I walked in, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. I stood in line, rehearsing my order in my head. When it was my turn, the barista greeted me with a cheerful, "Hi, what can I get for you today?" I smiled and said, "I'd like a cappuccino, please." The barista asked, "Would you like it with regular milk or almond milk?" For a moment I froze. Almond milk? I had never heard of it before. But instead of panicking, I asked, "What is almond milk?" The barista explained it kindly, and I decided to try it. We ended up having a short conversation about how almond milk is made and why some people prefer it. It was a simple exchange, but it made me feel so accomplished. I realized that not only could I order my drink, but I could also ask questions and engage in a casual conversation. Later during my trip, I joined a guided tour to visit some historical landmarks. The group was diverse, with people from different countries, and the tour guide spoke in English. I found myself understanding almost everything he said, from the history of the Tower of London to the significance of Big Ben. During a break, I struck up a conversation with another traveler. Her name was Emma, and she was from Australia. We talked about the places we had visited, the foods we had tried, and our impressions of London. To my surprise, the conversation flowed naturally. I didn't have to pause and think about every word. They just came to me. Emma even complimented my English. She said, "Your English is really good. How long have you been learning?" I laughed and told her about my journey, from struggling with basic words to holding this conversation with her. She encouraged me to keep going and even shared some tips for learning more advanced vocabulary. By the end of the tour, I had not only gained new knowledge about London, but also made a new friend. We exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. Another turning point came a few months after my trip, when my improved English helped me in a professional setting. My manager at work asked me to join a conference call with an international client. This was a big deal because these calls were usually handled by my colleagues who were fluent in English. Before the call, I was nervous. What if I made mistakes? What if I didn't understand what the client said? But I remembered my progress and told myself, "You can do this." During the call, I listened carefully, took notes, and even asked questions when I needed clarification. At one point, the client said, "Your English is excellent. It's been a pleasure working with you." That compliment made all the hard work feel worth it. I realized that my ability to communicate in English was no longer a barrier. It was a bridge that connected me to new opportunities. These experiences showed me that I had come a long way. The small victories I had celebrated along the way had built up to something much bigger. I could now navigate the world in English, whether it was ordering coffee, making friends, or handling work responsibilities. This turning point wasn't just about language, it was about confidence. I no longer felt afraid of making mistakes or being judged. Instead, I felt proud of my journey and excited about where my English skills could take me next. To my dear students, I want you to know that your turning point will come too. It might be a small moment, like understanding a joke in English, or a big one, like giving a presentation at work. Whatever it is, it will remind you that all your hard work and dedication were worth it. Keep going, even when it feels difficult. Every step you take brings you closer to that moment when you realize, I can do this. Believe in yourself, celebrate your progress, and never stop learning. The turning point is just around the corner, waiting for you to reach it. Let me take you to the part of my journey that truly transformed my life. The moment I began to experience the incredible rewards of learning English. After years of dedication, countless hours of practice, and overcoming countless challenges, my life took a turn for the better in ways I could never have imagined. The first thing I noticed after improving my English was how many doors began to open for me. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach were suddenly within my grasp. At work, my ability to communicate in English made me a valuable asset to my team. One day, my manager called me into his office and said, "We've noticed how much effort you've put into improving your English. We'd like you to handle our international clients from now on." At that moment, I felt both excited and nervous. This was a big responsibility, but I knew I was ready for the challenge. My first project involved a client from the United States. We held regular meetings in English, and I was able to express my ideas clearly and confidently. The project was a success, and my manager praised my efforts. This led to a promotion, something I had dreamed of but never thought was possible before. Another significant change was my ability to travel freely. Learning English gave me the confidence to explore places I had always wanted to visit. On one trip, I traveled to Canada, where I was able to navigate the cities, interact with locals, and even join group tours without hesitation. One unforgettable experience was attending a workshop in Toronto about global business trends.